In this video, we're going to finally bring in the named URLs, and you're going to understand why we keep sticking that name argument in the URLs file. It's a really powerful concept. It does make things a lot easier. One of the things I've found over the years, and by the way, I include myself in this, is that understanding the paths to get to a specific page with web addresses gets very confusing. A slash can mean different things depending on its context, so it does get very, very confusing. And if you're referencing a file relative to its location and all those things. So anyway, the named URLs argument really does help because it will largely generate the correct address for you if you know how to use it. Now you'll see our home page, and you'll notice I've made some changes to it. If you look at the page source, for example, you'll notice that these are generated URLs. It looks like I typed them in, but in actuality, these were generated using Django template language. And so let me go back, and you'll notice that the slashes in here, when do you use them, when do you not use them, it does get confusing. And if you look here at the address, if I click on this, for example, it takes me to the HR homepage, which we've seen. If we go to products, it takes me to the products page, and I know this is a little different. And if you click on this, for example, if you look at the page source here, you'll notice that these are also dynamic in the sense that they have been generated with the slash and the product and the ID. The question is, how do we do that? And we're going to rely on our named URLs to do that. If I click on this Moleskine notebook, for example, it tells me that there are 10 on hand. It takes me to the correct page. And even though this is extremely simple, say, relative to something like Amazon or any of those websites, this is largely the type of interface that the websites use. You click on the item that you're interested in, and it brings you to the detail for that particular item. So let's see how to do this. I created a Word document, and I'm going to show this to you, that walks you through the idea of named URLs. The URLs that we've generated here, we have, in addition to the main URLs, which just largely delegates out to the added applications. We're not going to have to worry about that, but this one we do. And these are the individual URLs.py files that are inside the added applications that we created. You'll notice that we have, for example, a named URL called home, we have a named URL called HR home, and we have two named URLs in the product added app. One is called product and the other one's called product home. So how do we leverage those? Well, the nice thing is that the name that we use can be used to generate the URL where the particular file is located. So for example, if I want to link to the home page for the application, I use this format. You remember this anchor tag format, A for anchor. Anchor tag, of course, generates a URL link. And we can say href, and then we use Django template language format to reference the named URL. I usually put double quotes on the outside and single quotes on the inside. I don't know if it's technically required, but I do it that way because it just makes me feel a little bit better because they are different. You use the word URL and then you reference the named URL, in this case home. It will go out to the go home method, find the HTML template that is referenced in that method, and automatically generate a link to that particular template. It's pretty cool how it works. And so that way you don't have to worry about where the template is relative in the whole project. You just reference it using this home approach. If I want to link to the HR home, I just use the HR home name. And if I want to reference the product home, I just do it that way. This is actually what is, this code right here, this is actually what is in the main home page that generated those links. So if you look at, for example, let me bring you over to the code. Let me show you the home page. This is actually what is in the actual code. But what was generated, if you look at the main home page here, if you remember, if I right click here, the page source, this is what was generated, the relative links to get to those particular pages. In other words, Django does all the hard work for us. We don't have to know it. All we have to do is know the named URLs, which is pretty amazing. If you go to the products page, again, notice the format here. In the lower left-hand corner, as I move through this, you'll see that it says product/1, product/2, product/3, product/4. As I move over these, you can see that those change. That's dynamically generated. And let me go back to my page here that I created for you. The way to do that is that requires a parameter. If you look at this particular URL pattern that we put into the product added app, you'll notice it has a parameter, and that is product ID. So therefore, the link is going to be dependent on the individual product ID. To link to that product that has, let's say, for example, let's say we just have one product, and that is one that has a product ID of 1. This would be how you could do it in any page in your project. Any page, doesn't matter where. It's any page. Doesn't have to be the home page. It doesn't have to be the product page. It can be anywhere, and you would automatically link to product 1 using this approach. You'll notice that we use the same format, but we have to code in the 1 here to indicate that that is the product ID that we want for this particular product. Now in practice, you don't want to link to an individual project, or a product rather. You want to link to a variety of products, okay? In other words, you're not going to hard code in your application a link to product 1, period. You want it to be product 1, product 2, product 3, product 4. And so to do that, we're going to use the product ID as a variable and then use the product description, and that will generate a link to an individual product using the description. Because remember, this is what you will actually see in the link. What you see then is it looks just like this. Okay, by using the description, this is what you see on the page, but if you look underneath, that is the /4, indicating that this is the information on the attaché. So let me show you how to do this. It's pretty cool. This is our home page that we created, and I just showed you the link. I added anchor tags along inside the LIs so that, and then of course this text is what actually is displayed, so you can see that. So this will link to each of the pages, the home pages in our application, which makes perfect sense. So let me take you now to the HR home page. And go to the templates folder. There we go. Now there's no changes there because we're simply just iterating through the employees. Now at some point, what might make sense though is that since this iterates through all the employees, it would make sense to update this so that if the employee's name is listed, and if we click on the employee's name, we get all the information about that employee. Again, that kind of that listing of information, you click on one thing and it takes you to the detail, and that would be a good thing for you to work on individually. If I go to the product home page, you'll see now that I've updated it to use the format that I just talked about. Now, I remember back earlier I talked about product ID, but remember we passed in, if you look at the the views.py, we passed in and we used this word items. Now, maybe I should have used product here to keep it consistent, but I wanted to reinforce the idea that the list of items that you pull in doesn't have to be the same as the what you pass to the template. So I use items purposely to illustrate that point. I hope it doesn't confuse you, but all you have to remember is that whatever's on the left side of the colon is how you have to reference it inside the template. So if I go over to the product home now, you'll see that I iterate through items, and my individual item now is going to be called item. That's why I have to use that here. And so I use item ID. That generates the dynamic URLs. This is the anchor tag right here that we were talking about. And so you'll see description being displayed, but the dynamic link that will be generated uses the item ID. I also incorporated this now into the individual product page. This if statement that we talked about in the earlier video, it was printing out the number 0. I largely just copy and pasted this now, and I put this in the product page. So now it will list the item as being out of stock in the individual product page as well. So I'd like you to try this. It is really cool. We'll be using dynamic named URLs from now on because it does make things a lot easier, and it creates this kind of nice interface in your product, in your project. So I can now click to individual products, and it's starting to feel more like a true web page because I have links now, and I can navigate through my page, my project, my website pretty easily, which is what we want. We're going to improve it, continue to improve it, but hopefully this gives you an idea of what's coming down the road. I hope this helps. Take care. Bye-bye.